Good afternoon again. This is Rebecca Hartley from CAVES and the Center for Workforce Development. I want to welcome everybody to the CAVES webinar series, and today we're going to be discussing strategic partnerships. I'm going to start with letting everyone of us on the panel do an introduction. So we'll start with Jenny Hall.
Hi, everyone. I am Jenny Moore, previously Jenny Hall. Some of you probably know me by that name, recently married.
Including me, sorry.
That's okay. I'm the Director of Partnership and Program Development for Clemson Online, and I used to be the Director of Digital Learning for CAVES and the Center for Workforce Development, and I'm lucky enough to still partner with the group and assist with some of the instructional design and other initiatives they have.
Oh, and I guess I'll introduce myself since Rebecca already
did. Sorry.
That's all right. So I'm David Clayton. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Manufacturing Innovation, and I'll talk a little bit more later on about what that is, but I am with Greenville Technical College, and we work very closely with Clemson and CAVES.
Okay, well, again, today we're going to be talking about strategic partnerships. We'll start with a step-by-step process for initiating, leveraging, and maintaining and growing partnerships. If you have a question, go ahead and type that into the Q&A portion of your connection, and we will address those after that first group or that first segment is over. Then we'll move into the partner perspective, which will be David. And then we'll move into challenges and lessons learned. So first I want to discuss strategic partnering as it relates to initiating partnerships. So you can see on the slides here we have 7 steps from vision and mission and creating that to creating a formal agreement. So we'll kind of go through these using CAVES as an example of how we've done this. So first, some of you might be familiar with CAVES and as it falls under the larger umbrella of the Center for Workforce Development. But what we have done with CAVES is to develop our mission and vision. Our mission is essentially to provide educational resources to two-year colleges and industry to help them prepare a technician workforce to specifically for CAVES meet the needs of the advanced manufacturing industry. And then for the vision, we follow a new national model that is engaging a collaboration between 4-year, 2-year industry and government agencies to transform the economies, both at a state, regional, and national level. So what we've done is to identify, and you can see on the slide here, our 4 pillars of workforce development. We have identified what those pillars are and then what components are incorporated within each of those, and then the different partner groups that fall within each of those areas. And then in our next step here to determine the relationship levels, we're looking at what we need from each group. And you can see that we've broken out the CAVES partners within government, our industry organizations, two-year colleges, and then current and future workforce. So what we're, again, looking for those groups is to see who they are, what they need, how they can contribute, and how to meet the challenges within the defined mission of our organization by using the resources and then creating new resources through each of those groups. And then this slide will show you some examples of our partners within each of the levels. So with our government leaders, we've got the Department of Commerce, the Department of Labor, and NSF ATE is just an example of some of our partnerships. These are opportunities for us to work in level 2 with industry and two-year colleges, and then our K through 12 school systems to support the resources that we are creating for these different groups. And then in level 3, we're looking at our current and future workforce which some of these overlap between industry and our government agencies and two-year colleges, but we're constantly looking, as many of you are, to fill that pipeline. And so how we can leverage our partnerships to do that is kind of what we're looking at in these three levels. And then initiating partnerships with access and visibility. These are just some of the examples of identifying different ways to engage the different categories of partners, whether that's through conferences or network meetings or existing networks. We are looking at the most effective way to engage with these groups and then leverage partnerships within our existing network to meet new partners, and for that purpose to provide more resources to those groups. And then the last piece for initiating the partnerships is looking at how you are going to create the roles and responsibilities, as well as establishing a formal agreement. So we're looking at usually, and it doesn't always have to be, but most of the time, some type of formal process to work together. And so how we would go about that agreement, we are looking at these different areas to consider in terms of our IP, our roles and responsibilities, how we're going to allocate resources to really highlight that. And later in our webinar series, we will do a specific webinar on a collaboration that we have with Clemson Online and Greenville Tech to create a new curricula. So I hope that you'll join us for that, but that will give you also a little more in-depth on how we have created those partnerships. So I'll let Jenny talk with you about the next stage of the partnership process.
So once you've kind of completed at least most of these steps for initiating partnerships, you need to start looking at how you're going to leverage each of the different types of partnerships, which of course will vary depending on what level they fit into. Either way, a good first step in this piece is to conduct a needs analysis and devise a plan for aligning the resulting data to the process of establishing a plan, a project plan, and a communication plan, ensuring those needs are embedded in every piece of that, and then executing that plan and getting continuous feedback for continuous improvement. So just a little more information about that needs assessment piece. You want to ask yourself, how are you going to assess partner needs? What's the best way to do that? And then how are you planning to use the results to shape your project? And in what we've done in many of the projects that we've been working on and the partnerships that we have, we take these needs assessments and have those handy or memorized and make sure that they're embedded in the objectives that we create for a particular project, the activities that we plan and perform to achieve those objectives, and then, of course, to make sure that the resulting deliverable or product is a clear reflection of the needs established during this phase. And then for the next step, it's really important to establish a very clear project plan and a plan for communication. And the reason that we have those split is because when you do have partners that vary in level, you may have some that your main role with them is continuous communication, informing of them of what you're doing, and then of course getting their feedback along the way. But then you also have a more active relationship with folks like subject matter experts who, starting in the early objective formation phase and then continuing, of course, through the development activities that you perform, and then the final resulting product or deliverable. That subject matter expert, in our experience and in the way that we have it planned out, really performs an iterative review and feedback process with us throughout those three phases. And like I said, the communication and engagement piece needs to happen through these phases as well, not just with the subject matter expert, but with higher level, more broad partnerships, just to make sure that they're in the loop and they know what's going on. And what we found is you never know what happens as a result of that communication. One goal should be that maintaining that communication and involving them is not only for the purpose of the existing project, but also for the development of future projects. Keeping your ears open in regards to what could be next, and then making sure that you are present so that you can even meet potential new partners to lead to additional projects and initiatives. And then we want to make sure that we're executing the plans that we create continuously, getting feedback and making adjustments to those. They're not written in stone. And that feedback and communication and engagement, again, really feeds into that phase as well.
And then the final phase of strategic partnership is maintaining and growing partnerships. So this phase involves the engagement of partners on the project launch, future plans, and then continuously networking with your partners. So you can see for step 11, engaging partners on a product launch. This would be working with your SMEs to provide feedback during the development, after the development, conducting pilot studies with students from partnering institutions. And I'm speaking, directly from what we're doing at CAVES with our pilot studies within our curricula development. And then in terms of an ongoing process for working with your SMEs and other partners to continuously improve what you have as a resource and bring in new ideas based on feedback from those pilot studies. And then the step 12 of this process includes partnering on future plans. Part of working within your existing network is to look for SMEs in emerging fields. So new technology is, as it emerges, you can talk with different SMEs about how to move forward with your resources, and then provide feedback on current and future industry needs, as we also know is constantly evolving. And then the last step is networking continuously, including partners on dissemination activities, which would be writing papers, presenting papers, presentations at conferences, and then also asking partners to host events at their own locations. This will help them with media coverage as well as broadening their network of partners with partnerships that you have. And then also engaging partners with pilot studies and other research engagement opportunities, which is another way, particularly in fields of technician education, to increase bandwidth and understanding of new technology needs and industry needs. So I think we're at a pause here. I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions before we move on.
It looks like one person has asked if we'll be providing a copy of our slides, and yes, we will be. We will, I think, post it on the website, and then can you see it? Okay, that's weird. Okay, we'll post it on the website, and we also have a repository where we're keeping all of the slides and videos associated with each of the webinars that we do in this series. So we'll provide you with a link to that as well.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to David Clayton. As we mentioned earlier, he mentioned earlier, he's the Executive Director of the Center for Manufacturing Innovation at Greenville Tech. And he is a great partner to Clemson, as well as our industry partners here in South Carolina. So I would encourage anyone that is visiting Greenville or in the Greenville area to contact him about seeing CMI. Jenny and I are here with him, and this is a very impressive facility, and especially if you have students that would like to look at some manufacturing opportunities, this is a great place for them to train. So I will turn it over to David, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate the introduction. And yes, everyone is welcome. So please call on us. We're in Greenville, right next to the Clemson International Center for Automotive Research. So if you know where that is, just next door. I wasn't sure who would be on the webinar from what state, so I thought we would just quickly introduce Greenville Tech for those out of state anyway. We are one of the 16 technical colleges in South Carolina, and we are locally governed, right? So every technical college system has its own body, administrative board, area commission that manages it. We have roughly 13,000 students, and another 15 to 20,000 every year come through our corporate and continuing ed and workforce development program. So it's a fairly large institution, and we're spread across 5 campuses, the newest of which is the Center for Manufacturing Innovation that I manage. And we opened last August, and it is solely dedicated to advanced manufacturing. And that's an important point, I think, especially in as much as we're trying to bring on partners and attract them to what we're doing. It really is a compelling vision when it's a special purpose facility, and manufacturers and local industry folks can identify with that and realize, okay, this is where I go to do manufacturing, workforce development, or training in Greenville. So it is an impressive facility, 100,000 square feet, and $25 million investment. In addition to that, we have $7 million of additional money from the state of South Carolina. And really, CMI is a partnership in its infancy, or before it was born, and that we, the area commission and our president, Dr. Keith Miller, were very deliberate about bringing the partners to the table to make it happen. So that includes a $25 million investment by the county and county bonds, $7 million from the state, and then the really hard work of pulling in industry partners and our employers. But to be honest, the vision in the beginning was from the voice of employers. So it really was formed as a partnership between employers, local government, and the educational institution. So you can see the mission there on the slide. I won't read that to you, but we are a little bit different than other manufacturing training centers in that we have a very strong economic development mandate. We have a business incubator. We do work for industry. A strong focus on attracting students, from K-12 and beyond to careers in manufacturing. And then we're working on these projects collaboratively with industry and Clemson and other partners. And so I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about that. So to give you an idea of since we're talking about partnerships, the breadth of the partners that we have at the table here are some of the larger ones that have contributed or are working with us in one form or fashion. And I purposefully didn't really draw the line between those that have given in some form of philanthropy, although you can probably point them out, versus those that we may just be working with day to day, like Greenville County School District and Clemson. And the reason that I didn't split them up is because in many cases they overlap. We have situations where a company is both working for us, with us, in a commercial interest, but then also in a philanthropic way. So, a great example of that would be GE Power. So we're trying to do some collaborative projects with them where they may hopefully will work with us commercially to develop some manufacturing process. We, of course, train and work with many of their students through apprenticeship programs and other means. And then GE Power has also donated a significant amount of money to help us attract more students to these careers. So, my next slide speaks to that a little bit, but one more point here is that if you look at the variety of partners, and I really enjoyed Rebecca and Jenny's presentation, and I wish we could have been more deliberate in how we went around forming these, but sometimes they just come happenstance or just by luck. But so when I think about where these partners, kind of how they came to the table, a lot of times it's just by the faculty and instructors that we have and being very engaged with the employers and the machine tool vendors. That's certainly the case with Haas. And Haas has donated $2 million to the college, and we have a lot of their great equipment. Sandvik, Renishaw, Mitutoyo, some of these other companies. Of course, our employers themselves, the employer students are an important subset. The foundation, the Greenville Tech Foundation, that of course raises money for the college, has brought many of these to the table to give us money, but then these companies or individuals want to contribute in other ways. So that's been important. And then our students, in fact, many of them are employed as apprentices or in other ways, and so they're in the plants and they see. We've had cases where a student has said, "Oh, this robot's not being used. Can you give it to Greenville Tech?" Oh, okay, we'll take that. So the partners can come to the table in many different ways. And another point is that a lot of times they kind of cross and blend lines. So this first Venn diagram on the left, talks about those three different groups. Who they are. In the middle, I've tried to put why they're working with us. In some cases, it's purely for commercial gain. Some it's philanthropy, and others it's folks within the organization that want to volunteer because they're passionate about it. But oftentimes, companies or partners can cross paths or blend between those various reasons. And then lastly, so what are they doing? What is the nature of the partnership? And here at CMI, we are doing education and training, we're doing research and the outreach and engagement. And so kind of to give it, some real world examples, because I think that's useful for the folks on the call is, one partner is Renishaw. So Renishaw makes 3D printers that print metal parts. It's called additive manufacturing. They also do measurements on machines. So we have been consigned equipment from Renishaw. They want to showcase some of their newest technology to potential customers. Of course, we want to train on it because it's some of the most state-of-the-art equipment that's around. We're also looking at how we can work together to develop new technology. And then they're also interested in doing outreach. So we had, actually through another partnership with Clemson, the Girls Ought to Know group, about 150 high school girls came and visited us, and we actually had a young lady from Renishaw, who's one of their senior engineers now, speak to them. She's British and of course a woman, so that was nice for the girls group. And so the partnerships can just sort of evolve in really nice ways. Then of course with Clemson and the Greenville County School District, it's another very deliberate partnership, but trying to bridge the gap between the training of the engineer and training of the technician. An engineer, meaning from undergrad all the way to PhD. So we'll be doing that here at CMI. But also on the outreach, working together to kind of work on that synergy between CMI and ICAR next door, and pulling other partners to the table. And so with Clemson and Greenville Tech being part of the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute that Rebecca's involved in as well, how we can kind of leverage that partnership at a national scale. So it can come across many different ways. Very quickly, because I know we want to keep us to the time limit. We while not as deliberate as maybe we should have been in forming the partnerships, we are very deliberate in the value that we can offer to our partners. And so these are just some of the ways that the things that we can offer partners, be they synergy, commercially. And so what I mean by that is this photo behind the text is actually a photo of one of our industry demo days. And so, for instance, Haas kind of organizes this, but other industry partners that we have, their machines or other things in the building, they can benefit from it too and make sales to those potential clients. Access to students, faculty, open house events. I won't read the list to you, but it really crosses the lines between our education training, commercial, and research very nicely under one roof. So I guess that's my last slide. I guess we'll talk about some lessons learned.
Yeah, so the last piece we wanted to kind of talk about was we've been through these processes in some cases, and then we've had experiences where maybe the partnerships, I mean, even for CAVE, Center for Workforce Development, and Clemson Online as well, were not quite as deliberate necessarily. And we've learned some lessons along the way that we wanted to share with you. And then I know that we've got a couple more questions that we can answer as soon as we finish with that. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and type them in while we're doing this final section.
So I think this first bullet point I added to the list, and I touched on this earlier, but I think having a compelling vision, especially when you're starting something new. So I guess the analog that I would give is if Greenville Tech were to have done just sort of an engineering and technologies building, it would not have been as compelling to nearly all of the partners that we have at the table as a advanced manufacturing people can identify with. And then we have a lot of new and innovative programs and technologies that we're doing here that people can really identify with and kind of want to be a part of from the ground floor. So I think just having a compelling new vision is important.
And I definitely think that compelling vision is important, and it kind of feeds into the second one because the rapid pace of industry, it moves so quickly that, once you focus on an area and if you work on that area in a silo and keep yourself kind of sequestered from some of your partners, it's harder for you to keep up with the pace and of what's changing and what new technologies are coming into your space that you need to be aware of. And then also the continuous and transparent communication. Sometimes we do get in our silos and work so heavily in one area, and we don't keep our partners updated with things that we're doing. And we can definitely attest to that because of just time and life and all the things that come into play. So it's very important though to make sure that your partners understand what you're doing, so that and that you're keeping in contact with them frequently.
Oh, next one's me. Picking partners wisely. I kind of mean this in two ways. One is that in some cases, especially with what we're doing, it's a bit of a showroom. So some companies want to, demonstrate their technology, and so you want to pick partners that certainly have a strong presence in the community, because these agreements can at times be mutually exclusive, even if you don't write them that way. We clearly have a big presence with Haas Automation, so while we could buy a competitor's machine, and they're not opposed to that, and we very may well in the future, it's unlikely that Mazak machine tool manufacturer is going to come in and make it a showroom as well. So that's one point. And another point is making sure that the partners or the individuals that you're working with within the companies kind of have your best interests at heart as well. We want to see, in our case, us grow our programs and be successful. We have been approached by, frankly, just the sales people trying to make that next deal, and you can tell when they're not interested in your long-term success. So don't say yes to everything. I guess is the advice there.
And kind of along the same lines, making sure that where possible, of course, every circumstance is not going to allow for this, but where possible and where appropriate, making sure that any agreements that you put forth with a partner are as detailed as possible. It does definitely take more time up front because you have to consider long-term scope in detail, and sometimes that can be hard at the formation of a partnership in early stages of a project. But it will save you, I think we've experienced several times, it'll save you headaches and more work in the long run if you're able to map that out from the very beginning. And then ensuring that, if you've got a partner that you're working with and you're starting to feel that it's very one-sided, if you're putting a lot into that partnership and not getting what you need from that partnership in return, it's good to take a second look at it and just make sure, is this really fitting with your mission and vision, and is this something that's going to benefit that overall goal that you have? And kind of along those same lines, there's a question that's very directed, I think, to this piece of it that Steve asked. It's very labor intensive, this process. He's asking, is it? And if, is there a limit to the number of partners that should be included? And that's a really interesting question. It's not necessarily labor intensive. It's just a process that takes place over a pretty long period of time usually. So even though there was a lot of steps there, that is spread out pretty well. And then it's just a matter of organizing it. So being deliberate about the process and putting it in place and making sure that you're aligning that with your mission and vision the whole time. And by doing so, that sort of puts a natural limit on the number of partners, I think. And Rebecca, the two of you might be able to report on this a little bit more too, but by saying these individuals align well and have sort of a shared mission and vision with what we're trying to do, there's not going to, that's going to naturally limit the partners you're working with. I don't know though that there would be a formal limit to that. Do y'all have thoughts on that?
Just one kind of real world example is that we are accepting some machinery on consignment from one of our partners right now. And I believe we've been working on the contractual side for 2 months, which, a state agency and a college within it. So it is work, and there's a lot of work, but it gives us an opportunity to be more, kind of stay on the cutting edge and stretch our dollar a little bit further. So it's worth it. But I wouldn't have put in 2 months of bureaucratic work if it had been something that was only worth $5,000 to me. So yeah, you have to, it has to be worth it.
Yeah, and I was also going to comment on Steve that, I think that the graphic that we put up, seemed like it had a lot of steps, but as we always talk about, relationships are a very large percentage of workforce development. And so that is kind of a way to look at it in a, graphic, in a visual way through that graphic to understand the ideal steps to go through in a partnership. So I would say that instead of maybe cumbersome, that partnerships are more relationship building in terms of the length of time that you're going to spend, which is needed in order to cultivate those.
So the next point was mine, and that and I don't have any data to support this necessarily, but we have a very welcoming building, a $25 million facility, and part of the reason is to change the vision of manufacturing. But we have literally had companies come in and say, "This is amazing. We want to donate something to you." Just walking in the building, which I don't think would have happened if it were just an industrial warehouse. So I can't say that this is factually true that we actually have recouped how much more the building did cost, but it certainly helps. It certainly helps a lot.
And then kind of along the same lines of lessons learned for leveraging, maintaining, and growing partnerships, if it's possible, creating a very detailed collaboration and communication plan, actually writing it out. Again, we go back to kind of the labor intensive piece of it. Yes, it takes a little more time up front to put that in place, but we found time and time again that mapping that out, making sure that everybody understands that what their role and responsibility is for each piece, and being able to see what other people are doing, other partners and then other team members are doing within the development process and commencement of activities is really helpful to achieving the overall goal, and well worth the time that it takes to put that in.
So again, sort of on the building side, one shot at a good opening, and I think this applies to not only buildings but programs, or new innovative things that you're doing. And by all hands on deck, I mean that we've had all of our faculty, all of our staff, the Greenville Tech Foundation, and the college leadership, from the president on down, giving an inordinate amount of time to make sure that we take advantage of this one opportunity that we have for opening. So obviously people in terms of donors or partners like to be in on the ground floor. So it has certainly been a lot of work over the last year, but I think it's paid off. And then the next one, Jenny already pretty well touched on that, but in terms of kind of multiplying the message, people hear about us and the opportunities through the media or events they may attend here. And, really we've just been about keeping the doors open and having literally thousands of people come through, and sometimes, just fortuitous things can come of that. So between the Chamber of Commerce, United Way, all these school district events, just trying to drive as much traffic, and then partnerships have been formed from those opportunities.
Yeah, and that involvement near the end, near the launch, is incredibly important to be creative and take a second, third, fourth look at who are these partners and what was their original goal for partnering with you to begin with. It's a long process, usually getting to the launch of a project, reviewing that and looking and saying, how would they want to be involved in the launch? What's most appropriate? And also for the internal purposes of growth, how can you structure that involvement in the launch with that partner to create new opportunities for your group as well?
And then our last lesson learned is know your network. Start communicating with the network about future projects before your current projects are complete. And then also select the most impactful partners by starting with a clear message and understanding of your network. Sometimes that's hard to do, even though we just said it so easily. So
yeah, all of this is easier said than done.
So I think we're at our last segment for questions. Does anyone have a question that we could answer before we leave?
So Elaine Kraft has a question. Hi, Elaine. How do you suggest dealing with personnel changes that happen within partner organizations to prevent starting over? That's a really good question. Rebecca.
Well, that is a great question, Elaine, and that is tough because a lot of times you take a step backwards. It's usually good if you can have that person, have several people within the organization to really understand across the board what everyone is doing. And particularly if you're on a small team like we are at Caves, I wouldn't say that I know everything that everyone does in terms of how to do it, with their expertise, but it is helpful in terms of leadership to make sure that everyone is aware of the projects that are going on, and everyone is knowledgeable of your network and interacting with your partners. And I think that is one thing that we are able to do with a small team, is make sure that we all have an understanding of what the partners do and who they are, to help with those transitions, because we have definitely had those. So
yeah, I would just add that like you said, Rebecca, the leadership, at least the companies that we're involved with, we try to make it a point that at least the local market or the president of the company is aware, so that those partnerships can continue in any case, and even agreements that are sort of verbal in some cases, try to get them in writing, either through an email or something, just so if someone disappears, you can always have something that you can fall back on with the next person to talk about what commitments were made. Yes. Not have to backtrack.
Do we have any other questions? And don't worry, this is not your last chance to ask us questions. You can always contact any of the three of us if you have any follow-up questions, or just want to learn more about what each of our organizations do as far as partnerships are concerned. You will get these slides, so you'll be able to check these out. Our information is on the first slide. I'm going to wait just a second to see if anybody has any other questions.
All right, well, we appreciate everyone's time, and as Jenny said, if you have questions, please reach out. We're always happy to talk with you and give you more information about each of our organizations. So have a good weekend, and thanks again for your participation.